You've heard of vampire bats, but what about vampire moths? These creepy creatures will make you think twice about stepping out into the night. Imagine an insect that doesn't just feed on nectar but craves something far more sinister: blood. But why would a moth drink blood? What drives this seemingly harmless creature to become a miniature Dracula? And most importantly, could it happen to you? When you think of moths, you probably picture them flitting around streetlights or sipping nectar from flowers. But there's a dark side to some species. The vampire moth, part of the Calyptra genus, has developed a taste for blood. Did you know that some vampire moths prefer human blood over animal blood? In experiments, these moths were given the choice between two feeding spots, and they picked human blood 70% of the time. This isn't just a freak accident of nature. It's an evolution that has puzzled scientists for decades. So, let's unravel the mystery. Why does the vampire moth drink blood? These moths are found in parts of Europe and Asia, especially in rural and forested areas. They prefer the quiet, undisturbed corners of the world, but what makes them unique is their unusual feeding habit. Most moths evolved to feed on nectar from flowers. Their long, tube-like proboscis is perfectly adapted for sipping sweet liquids. But somewhere along the evolutionary timeline, some moths took a different path. The vampire moth's closest relatives are completely harmless. In fact, they feed exclusively on fruit juices and nectar. The blood-feeding behavior is a bizarre evolutionary quirk that only a few species have developed. It started with fruit. Certain moths learned to pierce the skin of fruits to drink their juices. But over time, some species discovered that animal blood was an even richer source of nutrients, and just like that, the vampire moth was born. With a few evolutionary tweaks, these moths became capable of piercing not just fruit, but the skin of living creatures. The secret weapon of the vampire moth is its proboscis, a needle-like appendage that can pierce tough skin. It's surprisingly strong and flexible, allowing the moth to tap into blood vessels just beneath the surface. The vampire moth's proboscis isn't just a simple tube, it's barbed and serrated like a mini saw blade, to help it cut through skin more effectively. But it's not just the proboscis that makes this moth so effective. Their saliva contains anticoagulants, chemicals that keep the blood flowing and prevent clotting. This allows the moth to feed uninterrupted. Imagine this. You're out camping, fast asleep, when a vampire moth silently lands on you. It pierces your skin, starts drinking your blood, and you don't feel a thing. Unlike mosquitoes, vampire moths don't carry diseases, but their bites can still cause swelling, itching, and irritation, not to mention a serious case of the creeps. The bite is painless. The only clue might be a small red mark left behind. Creepy, right? Before the vampire moth becomes a bloodthirsty adult, it goes through a fascinating transformation. Let's take a closer look at its lesser-known stages, the caterpillar and pupa phases. In its caterpillar stage, the vampire moth is completely harmless. It spends its days munching on leaves and blending in with its surroundings to avoid predators. But don't let its innocent appearance fool you. This little creature is destined to become something far more sinister. Some caterpillars of blood-feeding moth species have evolved to mimic twigs or leaves as camouflage, making them almost invisible to predators. After weeks of feasting, the caterpillar enters the pupa stage. Inside its protective cocoon, a dramatic transformation takes place. Its body breaks down and reorganizes itself into the blood-sucking adult moth we know and fear. During the pupa stage, the developing moth grows its specialized proboscis, preparing it for its unique feeding habits once it emerges. Once the transformation is complete, the adult vampire moth emerges, ready to seek out its first meal. It's no longer interested in leaves or fruit. It craves blood. But that brings us back to our original question. Why blood? Why would a moth abandon sweet nectar for something as gruesome as blood? Blood is incredibly nutrient-dense. Just one feeding session can provide a vampire moth with enough protein and iron to last for days. The answer lies in nutrition. Blood is packed with proteins and other nutrients that are essential for reproduction. For a female moth preparing to lay eggs, blood provides a significant boost. In fact, some scientists believe that blood-feeding behavior evolved as a reproductive strategy. By consuming blood, female vampire moths can lay more eggs and increase their chances of survival. While vampire moths aren't the only insects with a taste for blood, they're certainly one of the most surprising. But should you be worried about them? In some regions of Siberia, locals have reported vampire moths biting through clothing to reach human skin. The good news is, vampire moths don't pose a serious threat. They're more interested in animals than humans, and bites from these moths are rare. Still, if you're planning a night hike in an area known for vampire moths, it doesn't hurt to take precautions. Long sleeves are your best defense. What makes the vampire moth so fascinating is the evolutionary leap it took from fruit juices to blood. It's a reminder that nature is constantly adapting in unexpected ways. Some vampire moths can switch between nectar and blood, depending on what's available. Talk about a versatile diet. And while the vampire moth is certainly creepy, it's also a testament to the incredible diversity of life on Earth. Who knows what other strange adaptations are out there, waiting to be discovered? So, what have we learned? The vampire moth isn't just a freak of nature, it's an evolutionary marvel. From piercing fruit to piercing skin, this moth's journey is a fascinating glimpse into how nature finds new ways to survive. The vampire moth's feeding behavior is so unique that it's been compared to mythical creatures like vampires. But unlike folklore, these little bloodsuckers are very real. Next time you hear something fluttering in the dark, remember, it might not be as harmless as you think. If you enjoyed this creepy critter tale, hit that subscribe button and join us for more bugged-out science. There's a whole world of creepy crawlies out there, and we're just getting started.